recording. So that being said, tonight we're going to be going over Unit 3. Ooh, got my cap lock on. Unit 3 or Chapter 3. Okay, and this has to do with agency. So we're going to be talking a whole lot of agency. So let's first define what agency is. Okay, so what agency is this. Agency is when you have an agent who works on behalf of a client or principal. Okay. Agency is when an agent works on behalf of a client or principal or represents them. Okay, that's another thing that we could say. So basically, there's a lot of different types of agency relationships that you could have. So we're not just, and here's the thing, when we're talking about the law of agency, when we're talking about what agency is, what's going on with this, what's happening, we're not just talking about real estate. Nay, we're talking about real estate. We're talking about power of attorneys. We're talking about a whole bunch of different things that fall under the law of agency. So let's talk about this, okay? So the law of agency, okay? So what agency is, okay, is going to cover, as I said, an agent working on behalf of a client or principal. So those things are interchangeable. And what we want to talk about is first the general laws of agency. There are 3 types of agency. There's universal agency. There is general agency. Now I have the hiccups. Oh no, it's not going to be good. And special agency. So we're going to talk about all 3 of those. So let's start with universal agency. So universal agency, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what it is and then give you an example of it. Okay. So universal agency, they have universality in their representation of client or principal. So what does that mean? Okay, that is usually the best example of that is power of attorney. Okay, I have power of attorney over someone else. Okay, I am their attorney. In fact, I have universality. What that means is I could buy prescription. I could pick up their prescriptions. I could sell their home. I could lease a car for them. I could do all those things. I have universality. So it goes into and it covers every aspect of their life. Okay. It covers every aspect of their life. So any questions on that one? Pretty straightforward, right? Not anything that I think is terribly confusing. Probably no questions on that one. So what else we're going to have is this. Okay. The situation with general agency. Let's talk about what that is. You have universality in one business aspect. Okay. For the client or principal. So what does that mean? That means basically that you could do anything you want within one business aspect. So let's give you an example. That would be a property manager. So a property manager. So watch this. Let's say I owned an apartment building. If I owned an apartment building and you were my property manager, you would be able to take out an ad in a newspaper for, for a vacant apartment, for rent. You would be able to fix a plumbing issue. So you'd be able to do that. Let's say we needed a van. Maybe we had, people in the property that needed, maybe it was an elderly building. So we needed to put someplace to get them, to and from doctor's appointments. So we needed a van. Maybe you go and lease a van for the business. Okay. So you would have universality to manage the property as you see fit to make it the most profitable that it can be. So That is general agencies, but you wouldn't be able to go and lease a car for me just generally, pick up my prescription medications as opposed to what a universal agent could do. So special agent is the last one. That is when you have a situation where you only have one aspect that you are representing the client principal on. So that is typically a real estate agent, okay? That is typically a real estate agent, okay? So what that is going to be when someone is working on behalf of someone to find them a buyer, or they're working on with them to find them a house to purchase or to rent, or renting their apartment. There's only one thing. They have no other aspects of that relationship that they are going to be working with that agent, with that principal or client on. So it's only going to be one thing. That's special agency or a special agent. So those are the three general types of agency relationships that you could have. So do you have any questions on any of those? Speak now. I'm just going to take 2 seconds while to just get a drink of water. So just give me 2 seconds, everyone. Hold tight. Sorry about that. It was like no questions from the peanut gallery. So what we're going to do is this. So let's move on. We're going to be talking about the relationship that an agent has with their principal or client and what we owe them, what kind of things we owe them, because we owe things called fiduciary responsibilities or fiduciary duties. Okay. So as an agent, when you represent a client, you owe them fiduciary duties. And the acronym that I like to use is OLD CAR. That's obedience, loyalty, disclosure, okay, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care. So let me give you an example of what each one is. And again, these are the duties that an agent owes to their principal or client. So if you're with a seller's agent, then what happens is you would be responsible to the seller for all of those things. You would have to be obedient. That means that you would have to obey any lawful instructions they have. Okay. If it is lawful, you have to obey it. Okay. If it is something that is within reason, you must obey it. Okay. That's it. Okay. Done. Kaputskis. Okay. Buyer says to you, place this offer for me. You were their agent. You have to place that offer. Done. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay. Loyalty. You must put their interests ahead of yours. Okay. So if you're not going to show them a property because you don't get enough commission on it, nay, that is a naughty, naughty little agent. Okay. You can't do that. Okay. That is a breach in the fiduciary duty of loyalty. Okay. Then there's disclosure. Whatever information you have that would be useful to your client, whether it be a buyer or seller, you must share with your client. That's it. Then there's confidentiality. Anything that they tell you that you are not legally obligated to tell another agent would be something that you have to keep confidential. Okay. And then accounting, basically that's general accounting. Like if they're giving you any kind of monies, okay, they're giving you monies, you have to be able to deposit it in a timely fashion, be able to account for it properly, all that stuff. And then reasonable care. You can't be a dodo brain. Okay. So like basically whoopsies can't happen. Okay. You have to handle yourself in a reasonable amount of care. So any questions on those? I think I outlined those pretty clearly for you. So those are the fiduciary duties that we owe a client. Okay. Now on the test, Hey, perk your ears up. If you've tuned me out this whole time, perk your ears up. What I want you to know is this. On the test, they will basically ask you questions where you will have to apply the fiduciary duties. You'll have to be able to figure out, hey, is this something that I have to make sure that I am obedient? Okay. Is this a situation where I have to be disclosing something to them? And also, something that I'm going to note here, okay, kind of like a little side note, you must disclose to all parties, listen to me, all parties, any material facts, any material details, okay? Material facts, material details, you must disclose, okay? Condition of the home, if you know about it, you cannot conceal it. I don't care if the seller says, I don't want you to, nay. You can't do that. It doesn't matter. Once you know, you have an obligation to tell them. Also, if you see a situation where, let's say you see something that might be concerning that maybe wasn't disclosed to you, and now you're aware of it, you must disclose it to all parties, okay? To all parties. Now, I'm going to give you a little New Jersey specific information. If there is a stigma on the property, okay, if there is a stigma on the property in the state of New Jersey, you do not need to disclose it. Deaths, ghosts, hauntings, legally do not need to disclose stigmas in the state of New Jersey. However, you might work for a brokerage, okay? Listen to what I'm going to tell you. You may work for a brokerage that requires it, that might say, no, we want you to disclose if there was a murder, if there was a death in the home, stuff like that. That typically, if I work for a brokerage, I manage an office, I always say, yes, disclose the heck out of it, okay? Me, I am a discloser. I 100% want to see all that stuff disclosed, okay? However, in the state of New Jersey, you do not need to disclose those things. So I just want to make sure that you're super duper clear on that as far as what legally you need to do and what legally you don't have to do, and where there might be a gray area, like what would be a best practice. Okay, so this would be chapter 3. For those of you just asked, this is chapter 3 or unit 3. Okay, so this is going to be agency. So now we're going to talk about something that is, again, New Jersey specific, but almost every state has something like this, but might not be called exactly that. We're going to talk about the consumer information statement. Okay. So the consumer information statement in New Jersey is going to be, okay, a document that outlines how we can work with a client and how we intend to, okay? So what are the ways in which we can work with the client? Well, we have to understand one thing first, okay? So the first thing that I need you to understand is this. The agency relationship, listen to what I'm going to tell you very carefully. The agency relationship is always with the broker of record and the client. You are simply a representative of the broker, okay? So let me repeat that. The agency relationship is always with the broker and the client, okay? So what happens is this. The agency relationship is 100% of the time with the broker of record and the client or principal, okay? So what happens is you are simply an extension of your broker. You are a representative of your broker. So what happens is consumers need to know how you intend to work with the client, okay? And they need to know basically how you intend to work with them. And they need to also know, okay, who you owe your fiduciary duties to, who you owe your responsibilities to, so that when they give you sensitive information, hey, do you need to disclose this to somebody else other than me? Okay, that's an important thing. They need to know that. Okay, they have the right to know who you have to disclose all of this information to. Okay, so they have to be made aware of that. That's why what happens is the consumer information statement is something that must be provided to a consumer upon the first substantial meeting. Upon the first substantial meeting, before anything comes out of the mouth, okay? Before anything comes out of the mouth, you must give the client this piece of paper so that they are aware of your agency relationships, what you and how you intend to work with them, and how you can work with them in New Jersey. We're going to outline the 4 ways in which you could work with someone. Okay, so there's first a buyer agent or a seller's agent, actually a buyer agent or a tenant agent. Okay, that's what it would be, buyer agent or tenant agent. So that means that you owe your fiduciary duties to either the buyer or the tenant. Okay. Now, next one is going to be seller's agent, landlord agent. And obviously that is going to be that you owe your fiduciary duties to the seller or the landlord. Okay. Now, the next 2 are going to kind of be a little tricky. We're going to talk about dual disclosed agent first. So, dual disclosed agent occurs in 2 different scenarios, but let me explain to you that it's really only one. So, it will occur when an agent represents both the buyer and seller. Okay. That is legal in New Jersey. Okay. But you must have informed consent of all parties. Okay. So everyone has to consent to it. Everyone has to have it. That's why it has to be disclosed. Okay. It's dual disclosed agency. So let's say I have a listing and then someone calls up on my lawn sign. Boom. Money, honey. That is an amazing day. Beautiful. Thank you very much. Cash a check. Okay. That is a wonderful thing. That would be dual disclosed agency if everyone consents to it. Now, the other time it happens, let's say I have a listing and then you work for the same brokerage as me and you have a buyer. Well, that's a dual disclosed agency as well. How? Well, the agency relationship is with the broker. So technically, the broker is representing both the buyer and seller. Now, in dual disclosed agency, a couple of funny things happen. You really cannot advocate for one side versus the other. Okay. So if you are 2 separate agents in the state of New Jersey, you really should not be advocating. You have to be as neutral as a mush. Okay. One side cannot get an advantage over another. So you can't advise, you can't advocate, you can't anything. Okay. You can't do that. Basically, you are a conduit at that point. Okay. You both are basically relinquished to conduit level where you're basically, that's it. You're nothing. Buyer agent, seller agent. You're basically, that's it. I'm a neutral party. I am simply here to facilitate. So is that great? No, we try to I personally, although the monetary benefits are great, it is not the best for the client. So I feel that always, whenever you have dual disclosed agency, you have the potential to not be absolutely honoring your fiduciary duty of loyalty. That's my opinion. And you could feel however you want about that, but that's my opinion on that. Okay. So The last one, okay, the last one that you're going to see is going to be that of a transaction broker. So a transaction broker is completely neutral. They don't have fiduciary duties to anyone. Anyone. They just owe everyone fair and honest dealing. Now, you're going to hear fair and honest dealing a couple times in chapter like this when you're talking about agency. So fair and honest dealing is going to be this. You basically cannot be unethical. So same thing happens with dual disclosed agency. You have to be fair and honest. Okay, you have to be fair and honest. Now, transaction brokerage, they work for neither party. Now, I'm going to tell you who else you owe fair and honest dealing. So we keep saying that your client or your principal, that's who you work with. So if I'm a buyer's agent, my client or principal would be the buyer, okay? If I'm a seller's agent, my client or principal would be the seller. Now, the other party, so if I'm a seller's agent, the buyer would be considered my customer. Sounds odd, but the third party is always labeled in an agency relationship as the customer. So if I'm working with the buyer, the seller would be my customer. I owe them fair and honest dealing. Basically the same thing that I would owe anyone in a dual disclosed agency relationship. I would owe them the same thing that I would owe to people that I'm in a transaction brokerage relationship with. Okay, very similar. You just cannot be underhanded. Nay, nay. Okay, nay, nay. So that is agency in a nutshell. Probably one of my favorite chapters, one of my favorite, most interesting chapters to go over. I like the agency relationships. So let me ask you this. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, and or burning desires? Anything. I'll take anything. Anything from anyone who's live with me? So what I'm going to do is stop the recording right now. Okay. And so anyone who's with me on recording, thank you for sticking with me for this little wonderful, amazing, fantastic chapter. I will see you all real soon.